I'm going to walk you through the steps that you need in order to craft the perfect character arc. One that will get readers addicted to your characters and your novel. They won't be able to put it down. The literary equivalent of a bunch of stuff that YouTube would be mad at if I talked about. This is a 4-part structure that's going to follow a somewhat similar structure to a lot of different plot structures, but with a focus on characters instead of plot. If you work through these 4 steps in your plot and your character arc, it will go a long way to making that character arc work really well, and thus making your entire novel work quite well. So the first thing that we need to do before we go about changing our characters is we need to lay some groundwork. This is the first phase of the character arc, and what I'm going to refer to here as the setup. The reader needs to get to know your characters in their life leading up to the beginning of the arc. In plot structures, this is sometimes referred to as the status quo. It is the ordinary life that your character is living before the events of the story swing into motion. We don't need to know every detail of their backstory or every day of their life leading up to the opening of the story. We just need to know some elements of their current situation, some elements of the everyday life that they're living and were living before the beginning of the story. The status quo can be either good or bad. Character arcs and the conflict of the story more generally can either be something that the character stands to gain or something that they are suddenly at risk of losing. More on that later, as it has to do with the second part of the arc. The most important thing to do in the setup phase of a character arc is to get your reader attached to the character. You need to present a likable, motivated, and intriguing character that the reader will want to continue reading about. We don't need to be overwhelmed with information. We don't need the character's entire backstory. We just need a few little nuggets of characterization. Motivation, the character's motivation, is a key facet of this. Your character should want something and have an underlying reason for wanting that thing. That's the motivation. Giving the character a proper established motivation, making the character likable or interesting or intriguing on some level so the reader connects with them. This is what you need to accomplish in the setup phase of the character arc. Next up comes the disruption. This is the event or change in circumstance that starts the character on their arc. Something changes in their life and they are forced to become someone else. This is a really critical feature of a character arc. Change is really hard to do, and people usually don't change unless there is something forcing them to change. I like to think of this change as cutting the ropes that were tying the character to their old life. That can be in a positive or a negative way. Those ropes could have been holding them down, limiting their potential, or it could be something that they were holding on to so they didn't fall down. Either way, they need to be cut. Your character might start out the story stranded on a desert island, starving and hopeless until an opportunity for escape presents itself. This is them gaining something from the story. The ropes getting cut are the ropes holding the character back. Or maybe your character comes home from work to their 3-bedroom house that's supposed to be full of their family, only to find an empty house and a ransom note pinned to the fridge. In this case, the ropes being cut means that the character is falling away from the life that they want, and they need to fight to get that life back. Regardless of what the character stands to gain or stands to lose with the disruption, the arc itself that it sets them on can be either positive or negative. A character can become a better person or a worse person after the changes they've gone through. Positive arcs are probably more common unless a story is a little bit more tragic, in which case negative arcs are usually what you go to. Regardless if the direction is positive or negative, the main point of the disruption is that the character becomes forced to change. They are forced to adopt new goals, to become a new person in order to get what they desire. The goals the character has may need to change, but often the underlying motivation usually stays the same. Sometimes their perspective on it shifts a little bit, but usually that underlying motivation doesn't necessarily change. The disruption can be an opportunity that's presented to the character. It could be a realization that causes them to frame life in a different way, or it can be some kind of conflict or problem that needs to be solved. Anything that splits the character away from who they were and gives them a direction for who they must become. Must become is the operative word here, or operative phrase, because it's more than one word. If you've done the first part of the arc, the setup, correctly, then the disruption in the character's life should really draw the reader in. We will have developed a connection with the character by demonstrating likability, motivation, and intrigue, and this connection will make the reader care about what happens to the character. They're called characters for a reason. The third part of the arc, the next part we're going to talk about, is where things get complex. This is the complications. You never want either a plot or a character arc to be completely linear. It's not just about moving a character from point A to point B. There needs to be some challenges, some complications, some difficulty along the way. This is the stuff that'll make your story more interesting and engaging. Change is never simple, and things should never progress the way we think they should. These complications can happen because of the character's flaws or the lies that they still believe about the world. Maybe they are impatient or hot-headed and that gets in the way of their goals. Maybe they just straight up refuse to change at all. They refuse to accept the fact that they are on a character arc in the first place. Maybe they need to learn a new skill and really struggle with it. Maybe the evil villain's plans are just so darn crafty as to foil our hero at every turn, forcing them to become better, more adept, and more skillful. I want to emphasize the difference here between obstacles or diversions and complications. Obstacles or diversions are something that needs to be gotten around in order to end up at the same place. Complications are things that require the character to adjust their course of action. It might require them to change their goals, to do something that they weren't expecting to do. If the hero is trying to reconnect with their estranged child and wants to show up to their birthday party, but they get stuck in traffic, that's an obstacle. It's a diversion. It doesn't change the goal or the action the character is taking. It just makes the action more difficult. Obstacles and diversions are less interesting than complications because they just sort of feel like a delay. We know where the character is going. We know they're eventually going to end up there, but it's just taking longer because reasons. If, say, the hero arrives at the birthday party, but their kid gets really angry and the hero reacts impulsively, maybe bringing out some of their flaws, and their appearance at the birthday party doesn't mend the relationship, it doesn't accomplish the goal that they set out to accomplish, then that's a complication. An action the character thought would bring about change didn't work, and now they need to take a new action. They are confronting their flaws and their weaknesses. They are stuck in the same place because they still have a flaw that keeps them there. Things have become more complicated. We have to go in a different direction. We're not just delaying going in the direction we knew we were going into. In the context of a character arc, these complications can either be internal resistance to change, a refusal to give up the lie that is keeping the character static, or they can be external challenges, challenges that arise when the character tries to change. I'll also say that you need lots of these complications. Put your characters through the ringer. Have them brush up against every flaw that they have. Make everything they do seem like it's going to fail. Good complications will engage readers because by this point, the reader should really want the character to change. So preventing that change will align their desire with that of the character, which is always a good thing. Which brings us to the final arc, the new status quo, or the status quo 2.0. That sounds cooler. This is the part of the arc where the character finishes their transformation. They now approach life in a new way. They are skilled, more emotionally grounded, more confident. Maybe they have a new haircut, whatever. They are reaping the fruit of whatever they've sown, whether that's positive or negative. The important part of this part of the arc is the character being unable to go back to the way they were. This could be because of a strong desire on the character's part to not go back to their old ways, or it could be that their situation has changed so much that the old life is completely behind them and they just can't go back. Sometimes you can do this by having the character encounter a similar situation that they encountered at the beginning of the story and have them react differently to it to show how they've changed. Other times, in something like the hero's journey, I think one of the steps is the character has to go back home, but then there has to be a demonstrated reason why they can't stay there. So they return to where they started the story, but they can't stay there because they've changed, that sort of thing. You want some way to demonstrate this change and that the character can't go back. The reason this is so important is because if you've done the other steps in this character arc, it means that your character has been pushed to their limit. Any changes that have happened has been hard fought, and nothing would be more unsatisfying than losing that change. So we need to cement the fact that the character can't change back. If there's some way that the character can just go back to their old life, then you risk retroactively making the story feel kind of pointless, which is going to be very disappointing for the reader. Impactful changes need to stick, which is why the fourth part of a good character arc is demonstrating that those changes will stick. Speaking of sticking things, I won't be sticking around because this video is almost over. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.